Two crises, one system. It sounds pretty simple, right? But it's actually the key to understanding everything that's happening with energy in the world right now. We're going to dig into the crisis of today, but to really get it, we've got to rewind the clock 4 years to the last major shock. Because while they might look similar on the surface, the way the world is reacting couldn't be more different. So, are you feeling a little bit of déjà vu? You see the headlines about soaring energy prices and think, wait, haven't we been here before? And you're not wrong. But here's the thing. This time, it really is different. The current crisis, which is all centered around Iran, is hitting a world that has fundamentally changed since 2022. The system itself is different, and that changes everything. To really get to the heart of why it's so different, we have to pull up a map. We have to look at geography. Specifically, we need to talk about one narrow strip of water that is, without a doubt, the planet's energy jugular. And this is it, the Strait of Hormuz. It is the only sea passage from the Persian Gulf out to the open ocean. That means all the oil and gas from giants like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar has to squeeze through this one little channel. And when I say little, I mean it. At its narrowest point, the shipping lane is just a few kilometers wide, which makes it incredibly vulnerable. Just how vulnerable are we talking? Well, get this. About 20%, a full fifth of the entire world's daily oil supply, passes right through this single point. And on top of that, a fifth of all the liquefied natural gas, or LNG, traded globally has to get through here too. It's really simple. When this strait is threatened, the entire global economy feels it. So let's actually compare the shockwaves from these two moments. We're going to put 2022, the crisis sparked by the war in Ukraine, right up against today's crisis, which is focused on Iran and the Strait of Hormuz. Now, just look at these gas prices. This is for the UK. During that 2022 crisis, wholesale prices for gas went absolutely nuts, skyrocketing to £640 for a unit called a therm. Today, even after prices have doubled in a month, they're sitting at £169. That's nearly 4 times lower than the last peak. It's a massive difference, and it's our first big clue that something is up. But here's the puzzle. When we turn and look at oil, the story is completely different. The price for Brent crude oil hit about $119 a barrel in 2022. Today, it's peaked at $115. I mean, those numbers are almost identical. And that brings us to the central question of all this. If the price of oil, the world's most traded commodity, is just as high as it was last time, why does the overall economic pain feel, well, less severe? Why are we not seeing the same level of absolute panic in the gas markets?
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more investing content, tap that like button and make sure you subscribe to the channel.
The answer, it turns out, lies in everything that's happened in the 4 years between these two crises. The world has been quietly building a kind of energy shield for itself, and it is changing the entire game. Let's just use the UK as a case study for a second. Since 2022, there's been a massive build-out of all these technologies that just flat out reduce our demand for fossil fuels. We're generating a lot more clean electricity from solar and wind, and we're using that clean electricity to power our cars and heat our homes. Take electric cars, for example. There are now 1.2 million more of them on UK roads than there were back in 2022. Every single one of those cars is running on electricity instead of imported oil, and that directly chips away at our overall demand. And where's that extra electricity coming from? Well, a big piece of the puzzle is over 2.6 gigawatts of new solar capacity that's been added to the grid. You combine that with more wind power, and it helped the UK cut the amount of natural gas it had to burn for electricity by 27% last year compared to 2022. And the financial impact of this is just enormous. Thanks to all this new wind and solar, the UK is expected to save between 5 and 7 billion pounds on gas imports this year alone. That's real money that's staying in the economy, not being sent overseas. But look, this is not just happening in one country. This transformation is a global phenomenon, and the speed of change over just the last 4 years has been absolutely breathtaking. Check out this timeline. Since 2022, global EV sales have doubled. Annual solar installations have tripled, and the deployment of those big grid-scale batteries, which are so critical for storing clean power, is 7 times higher. This isn't slow, incremental progress. This is exponential growth, and it's building a huge shock absorber for the entire energy system. But that shield, that shock absorber, it isn't perfect, not by a long shot. While renewables are definitely providing some newfound resilience, the global energy map shows us exactly where the remaining risks are hiding. So here's the reality check. Despite this incredible growth, fossil fuels still dominate. Oil, coal, and natural gas make up over 80% of global energy. Now, clean energy is growing fast at 18%, but it has a long way to go. And this deep dependency is exactly why oil price spikes can still cause so much pain around the world. So who's the most exposed to this risk? Well, when you look at what percentage of a country's total energy comes from oil they have to import, a very clear picture emerges. The economies that are most vulnerable to a disruption in the Middle East are heavily concentrated in Asia. We're talking about manufacturing powerhouses like Japan, South Korea, and Singapore. This lingering vulnerability and getting hit with these repeated shocks has forced a fundamental change in how the world talks about energy. It's no longer just about finding the cheapest source, it's about securing a reliable source. The focus has shifted squarely to energy security. And it's pretty easy to see why. Modern civilization runs on energy, period. It lights our homes, it runs our factories, and it's going to power all those AI data centers in the future. A country can survive without its own natural resources, but it simply cannot function without a secure supply of energy. This new focus is forcing a global rethink. Nations are scrambling to figure out how to handle the massive new electricity demand coming from AI. They're confronting the fact that fossil fuel supply chains just aren't that reliable. It's even led to a serious renaissance for nuclear power, which is seen as a stable, domestic source of energy. And there's a huge push to avoid becoming dependent on any single country for critical energy tech, whether that's Russian gas or Chinese-made solar panels. So after all that, what does this all mean for the future of our fuel? Well, let's end on a dose of reality here. Even with this staggering growth in renewables, the transition away from fossil fuels is a marathon, not a sprint. The International Energy Agency still projects that even by the year 2050, oil, gas, and coal will still provide 60% of the world's energy. So the conflicts over these resources are not going away anytime soon. Which leaves us with a final and pretty fascinating question. The 2022 crisis is what spurred the very investments that are cushioning the blow for us today. So does this mean that every new fossil fuel shock, however painful it might be, will now just accelerate the transition away from them? It really seems that with every crisis, the flywheel of change just spins a little bit faster.